My fellow Nigerians, as your future president, I want to talk to you today about the 25th anniversary of FOCAC, the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, which in Chinese is Zhongfei Hezuo Luntan. Yes, I speak Chinese very well. So yes, FOCAC was formed on October 10, 2000, as the primary multilateral coordination platform between African countries and the People's Republic of China. And it has indeed been a huge success. In 25 years, FOCAC has registered major economic, infrastructural, and human capital achievements. Bilateral trade, for example, surged from modest levels in the early 2000s to roughly $296 billion in 2024, with China being Africa's top trading partner for 16 consecutive years. Since December 2024, China has given 53 African countries zero tariff treatment for 100% of tariff lines on their exports, boosting market access into China. Sadly, many African businesses aren't taking advantage of this policy, mainly due to the challenge of shifting from raw material exports to value-added exports. But that's not China's fault. This was one of the issues I mentioned when I spoke at the China-Africa Young Leaders Forum in China in 2024. Regarding job creation, Chinese firms generated at least 1 million jobs in Africa in the last 3 years alone, thereby reducing poverty and transferring skills. In terms of infrastructural development, in 25 years, China has built or upgraded over 100,000 kilometers of roads and more than 1,000 bridges, more than 10,000 kilometers of railways, and nearly 100 ports or airports, greatly boosting connectivity and intra-African trade, and thus helping to give that's the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, a fighting chance. Major infrastructure projects worth mentioning include the Ethiopia-Djibouti Railway, the Mombasa-Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway in Kenya, the Lakidi Seaport in Nigeria, and the Tazara Railway linking Tanzania's port of Dar es Salaam and Zambia. In addition, since 2018, FOCAC has been integrated with China's Belt and Road Initiative, which focuses on promoting infrastructural development in developing countries. In the human capital and social sectors, China has trained more than 20,000 African professionals, established agricultural technology demonstration centers, and built several hospitals and schools. Now, for these and other reasons, I'm very passionate about Chinese investments in Africa. In fact, as I speak, I have a Chinese investment partner in Nigeria exploring investment opportunities in at least 7 different sectors on behalf of several Chinese companies. By the way, another thing I greatly admire about FOCAC is the balance in terms of alternating African host nations across the 5 African regions whenever it is Africa's turn to host the triennial FOCAC summits. For example, the 2003 summit held in Ethiopia in East Africa, that for 2009 held in Egypt in North Africa, 2015 was in South Africa in Southern Africa, and 2021 went to Senegal in West Africa. It should of course have been Nigeria, the giant of Africa, but the Buhari administration wasn't engaged enough. The next one in 2027 will be in the Congo in Central Africa. It should have been in Cameroon, Africa in miniature, but apparently, like Nigeria, Cameroon didn't play its cards well. That said, the triennial summits also ensure accountability via 3-year action plans. So in all, what do I think are the prospects for China-Africa relations 25 years after the formation of FOCAC? In 2023, I spoke at the China-Africa Youth Festival organized by China's Foreign Affairs Ministry in China. There, I said Africa needs closer ties with China because China is an economic and manufacturing superpower, a transportation superpower, an e-commerce superpower, an emerging space power, and an emerging AI power. And all these are very important aspects of modern life. No serious country in today's world can thrive without some sort of partnership with China. I also talked about the great potential for increased cooperation between China and Africa across many sectors, such as crop production and agricultural development, solar power development, digital connectivity and innovation, urban development and management, and transportation infrastructure. A few relevant details will suffice as follows. First, while many African countries still have serious hunger challenges, China is a top or major world producer of several crops. Thus, Africa can learn so much from China in crop production and agricultural development. Second, in solar power development, Africa and China are like a match made in heaven. While Africa leads the world in solar power potential, China dominates the world in all steps of solar panel production. So a win-win arrangement in this sector will be very easy. Africa will be a good market for Chinese solar panel manufacturers, which will improve energy supply in Africa. In the long term, African solar panel manufacturers will learn from their Chinese counterparts and improve local manufacturing. Third, it is almost impossible to talk about digital connectivity and innovation in the world today without mentioning China's Huawei. That's because Huawei, which offers great services at affordable rates, is by far the world's most valuable telecommunications infrastructure company, with investments even in Western countries. On the other hand, Africa has the lowest digital connectivity rates. Thus, Africa needs more investment in digital connectivity and innovation by Chinese companies like Huawei, Inspur, and others. Next, Africa and China are also a match made in heaven in urban development and management. Recent United Nations projections show that most of the fastest growing cities in the world are in China and Africa. But while China has already mastered the art of urban development and management, Africa still lags behind. Indeed, three of China's greatest urban strengths are effective public security management, adequate housing, and efficient waste management. As we all know, rapid urban development in Africa will attract increased crime rates and issues with the availability of adequate housing and waste management, meaning Africa can learn a lot from China in this area of urban development and management. Finally, talking about transportation infrastructure, as mentioned earlier, China has already been greatly involved in the construction of many infrastructural projects in various African countries. But there's always room for more. We would love to see China increase its Belt and Road Initiative investments in Africa in the years and decades ahead. Indeed, a Chinese idiom says, if you want to be rich, first build roads. Now, let me talk about the Chinese model of development and why it is absolutely necessary for Africa. In 2008, Abdoulaye Wade, the president of Senegal at the time, said, and I quote, "If I want to build 5 kilometers of road with the World Bank, it takes at least 5 years. 1 year for discussions, 1 year back and forth, 1 year I don't know what. With the Chinese, it is a few days and they send a team and we sign." End of quote. Similarly, some years ago, Aubrey Hrubby, then a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council's Africa Center, said, and I quote, "When an MOU is signed, the Chinese can be on the ground in a week doing feasibility studies. This is why African governments say, oh, the American firms take so long to do a feasibility study. The Chinese will do it in 2 months." End of quote. Also, in 2011, Garth Shelton, an associate professor of international relations at Wits University in South Africa, said, and I quote, "Throughout Africa, economic development is hampered because of the lack of our infrastructure. China can provide infrastructure that we desperately need. With the Chinese, you can get a deal done in 3 hours that might take 3 years with Western partners." End of quote. Indeed, under former Ghanaian president John Kufuor, that's between 2001 and 2009, Ghana had a dam project with the World Bank which was delayed for over 7 years. A Ghanaian president can only serve for 8 years, that's 2 terms, and he or she needs to improve the lives of the people. Disappointed, President Kufuor turned to China and they started digging in about 1 month, just 1 month. So you see, the Chinese model of development is based on speed and efficiency, which is exactly what Africa needs because of our many development challenges. Now, despite FOCAC's 25-year track record clearly showing that it has become a vital engine for Africa's development. Challenges still remain, particularly in terms of debt sustainability, trade imbalances, and local ownership. Regarding debt sustainability, here are my thoughts. Number one, it is not bad to borrow. What really matters is how we spend borrowed money. Number two, some Chinese loans are emergency loans designed to help African countries in distress. Three, in August 2022, China canceled 23 interest free loans for 17 African countries. Four, China previously canceled 3.4 billion US dollars and restructured about 15 billion US dollars of African debt from 2000 to 2019. 5. China doesn't seek hegemony or colonialism. Those accusing China of debt trap diplomacy are only trying to stop Africa from drawing closer to China. 6. We should grow our economies in Africa so that we will not default on our debts. For trade imbalances, as earlier stated, it's up to us, African countries, to improve on our manufacturing so that we will be able to export more value added goods to China and elsewhere. In terms of local ownership and participation in projects, it is again up to us in Africa to negotiate better terms so as to improve Chinese technology transfer and reduce the reliance on Chinese labor in projects. I'm confident that we'll make progress in these and other areas of concern in the years and decades ahead, and that will help the China-Africa relationship to continue to thrive. May God bless China, may God bless Africa, and may God bless FOCAC.